Hi guys, Tracy here with a video all about pens that I like to use for outlining and journaling. So I won't be talking about pens for coloring or for any special techniques or pens that have certain special features. I'm just going to be talking about pens that you can use for outlining and journaling only. So I have a selection of pens here just to talk about what the options are, and I mean, there's a lot more options than what I have. This is just a sampling of my pen collection, and I'll talk a little bit about, I have some that are picked out that are my particular favorites. I have a few that are my less favorites. I'm going to talk about how they work and on different surfaces and what I like about them. So I'll start by saying that my favorite pens are Staedtler pens. I love their Tri-Plus fine liner markers are my favorite colored markers for doing journaling and outlining and fine work. And I also really love their pigment liners. They look like this. I'm going to talk a little bit about them in a minute. And I like their Lumocolor permanent markers that are designed for working on slick surfaces. So Staedtler is definitely my top pick. If I had to pick one brand, I would buy Staedtler markers and pens. My next favorite is the Faber-Castell Pitt pens. I love these. They have India ink inside of them, and they are great because you can use the same pen for all of your mixed media needs, as well as, or most of your mixed media needs, as well as for your scrapbooking needs. So this would be my close second. This is the Sakura Pigma Micron, and this is one of my top 3 picks as well. So if I were getting a set of black markers to do my journaling in, I would get a set of Staedtler pigment liners, or a set of Sakura Pigma Micron liners, or I would get a set of Faber-Castell Pitt pens. Those would be pretty interchangeable. They can be used on similar surfaces and in similar conditions. I am going to go through all of these pens and show you what they all look like on paper and also on different surfaces, because then you can get a sense of what pens work which ways and which ones you might want to buy. So I'm just going to zoom you in and move my pens up. So this is a piece of regular pattern paper. I chose a piece that has lots of white on it so that you can see what these pens look like on a white paper. I tend to do most of my journaling and my outlining on pattern paper, so I thought that this was the best representation rather than cardstock or something else. So I'm going to start with the Staedtler pigment liners. They come in 3 different, well, they come in a lot of different widths. I usually buy my markers in 0.1, 0.3, and 0.5. And that allows me to have a nice small variety without having too many pens. So this is what, I'm going to call this the Staedtler pigment liner. Come in a little bit more. There you go. Staedtler pigment liner. That's what that one looks like. That was 0.1. Staedtler pigment liner 0.03. And the Staedtler pigment liner 0.5. So you see how they get successively broader strokes. The other thing to keep in mind is, let's pick the mid-range width here. If I were outlining really quickly, like this, that line is a certain boldness. It's the middle one, so it's this one. If I were outlining slower, it gets considerably darker. So even with one thickness of marker, if I chose the 0.3 because it's mid-range, I can make my letters fairly thin by going fairly quickly, or I could make them thicker by going slower. 2 looks with 1 pen, depending on how quickly you go. So this is what the tips look like on the Staedtler pigment liners. They have a silver metal barrel and then a felt type hard nib. Similar set of pens are the Micron, the Pigma Microns by Sakura. So let's start with 0.1. So this one I'll call Micron. They don't mark very differently than the Staedtler on regular paper. You can't really see the difference. There's the 0.3 quick and there's the 0.3 slow. I can write the word letters quickly, or I can write the word letters slowly. And it just depends. The thickness of it depends on the speed, like the other ones. These are what the tips look like on the Micron. They also have a metallic, a metal silver barrel with black felt nibs. Now these Faber-Castell Pitt pens are very similar when you're using them with scrapbooking, with kind of standard scrapbooking, only they don't have their widths are not marked in terms of 0.1, 0.3, or 0.5. So I'm going to show you how these ones, which the tips are super fine, fine, medium, and then I also have the brush tip. So I will show you these. So I'm going to start with super fine. So these are Faber-Castell Pitt pens, and this one is super fine. Faber-Castell Pitt pen brush. And I've got a little bit of a fiber hanging off the brush, so I'm going to take that off. Faber-Castell Pitt pen brush. That's what it should look like. So I'm not sure that Faber-Castell Pitt pens come in anything finer than a superfine, but you will notice that the Faber-Castell pens are all slightly heavier than the Staedtler pigment liners and the Microns. These two are pretty similar, but this set is all probably 1 up from these. So these probably start at more like the 0.3, 0.5, and then higher from that. So this might be 0.7, and this is a brush pen, so it's not as comparable, but it's quite a bit more bold. This is what the tips of the Faber-Castell Pitt pens look like. They also have a metallic barrel, except for the brush pen, and a felt nib, except for the brush pen, which has a softer nib that's more flexible. Oops. So I do like to have an even finer pen. I use this one much less frequently, but it's good to have on hand anyhow. I have this Prismacolor Premier pen in a 0.05 size. There, it says right on the tip of the lid. And this 0.05 size is a very fine marker. It has a similar barrel and nib to the other markers I've showed you. I don't have any other Prismacolor markers to compare it to, but it does write even finer than the... If I were to compare it to the 0.01 of any of the other markers, it is noticeably thinner. I find this one, this 0.05 one, really great for filling in misstamped areas. If you need a very, very, very fine line where your stamped image did not go through onto the paper. It's also really great for outlining when the nib of this won't fit between things, when I'm going along the outside of letter stickers and I've got my letter stickers up against one another so close that the nib of this just won't fit between them. Usually the nib of this one will fit. So it's handy to have if you're really into outlining. So I wanted to point out that these slick surface markers are available for marking on anything slippery and shiny, like shiny stickers, for example, or glossy paper, or lots of acetate. I will show you how they mark on different surfaces, but for now I just want to point out that these are not the best markers for using on regular pattern paper or cardstock because they sink in quite a lot. So they're a lot juicier because I'm going to show you the Lumocolor Fine. So it's quite a bit, it sinks into the paper. I'm not sure if you're even going to be able to see that, but basically in the little parts where my letters begin and end, there's more of like pooling happening. The letters kind of pool. And some feathering happens. Especially if you mark slowly with these ones. They're also not as smooth writing on paper. They're a little bumpy, and because they're bumpy, you'll see little pools of extra ink where it bumped, if that makes any sense. So I will show you the barrel of this one is different. It has a bit of plastic. It comes to a plastic triangular tip. And then this medium point Lumocolor, which is made again for slick surfaces, has an even broader. It writes a little bit smoother, but it's still going to feather out a little bit as it dries, so it's not the best choice. The other option for slick surface is a ultra fine tipped Sharpie, which looks like this. It's similar to the other markers that I've showed, like the Staedtler pigment liner and the Micron and even the Pitt pen, except that the barrel is plastic instead of metallic. These are widely available and they are very inexpensive, so that's the good thing about them. They do mark better on pattern paper than the Lumocolor does, but they will sink in. There is another tip, so that's the ultra fine tip. The other tip for Sharpies is a fine point, which is not all that fine pointed. I don't have a black one, but this is my blue one. Sharpie fine is not really fine. It's more of a bowl. It's more of a bullet point. So that's how the these are slick surface writers. So they're not in the same category as all of these ones up until then. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see all of those. So these are paper writers, and then these are slick surface writers right here. Now, I do want to mention another series of markers that I often recommend. I have these Zig writers. I have them in black and brown and gray. What I really love about these pens, this was my very first scrapbooking journaling pen that I ever got. This is probably my third one of them, but it's the first model of pen that I got. What I really like about these is that there are two tips. So it has a fine point for journaling, and it's another one of those ones that comes to a triangular tip. And it writes like this. Mine is running out, so it does write a little bit better than that typically. Well, that's what it looks like. Fine. And you can tell, even though it looks like it's identical on each side, you can tell which side the fine tip is on because it has these little grooves, whereas the broad point does not. So that's a little tip for being able to really quickly see which side you've got. It does have a little indicator there that says that this is 0.5 and that this is 1.2. But if the marker isn't facing that way and you just pick it up randomly, you can always orient yourself to which side to use by this. I mean, this is usually the side that I use when I'm using my Zig Writer. I will show you what the 1.2, which is a bullet point, it looks like that. I'll show you how that writes. So it's quite a bit bigger. It's hard to write with it, but it is really great for doing bold outlining around the edges of things. So this is a really great starter pen because you get 2 pens in one with this one, 2 different outlining options in one pen. So I really like this pen for that reason. The brown one is exactly the same. Like that. The gray one is not my favorite gray marker in the world. It's too bluey, but this is what it looks like. And the tips are the same. So if you're looking for a cool gray, the gray Zig Writer is a good one. I really like the bold marker in the gray. It looks good in bold. The gray that I prefer is this Chamel pen by American Crafts. This is a beautiful shade of gray. First of all, it's a bit darker than the Zig Writer gray, and it is a warmer, less bluey shade. And I like that about it. One thing about the Chamel pen is that it is very similar to the American Crafts precision pens, which I used to use, and if you watch my previous marker video, I did recommend these at that point. I'm changing my recommendations for this. I'm no longer recommending these because they do run out very, very quickly. And they're just not as nice of a pen. They're no less expensive than these nice ones, and these just aren't as pleasant to hold. They feel kind of inexpensive. They do run out really quickly. They write fine when they do work. Oops. So they do write fine. But they just, I don't know, they just feel cheap. And they're not any cheaper than these. I mean, if they were cheap, then that would be fine. But they're not much cheaper, if at all, than these kinds of markers. So these come in a variety of different widths as well. You'll find them in scrapbooking stores. I have them here in 0.01, or in 0.1, 0.3, and 0.5. The other thing about them is that they all look the same regardless of the widths of them. So I put washi tape on the ends of them so I could remember which was which. I think these are both 0.03. I think my 0.05 ran out, so I threw it away. Yeah, so these are the American Crafts Precision Pen. It says they're fine tip for multi-purpose, acid-free, fade-proof, waterproof, and non-bleeding. But like I said, they do run out quite quickly, and it could be that the lids on them, they don't snap on, they just go on with friction, and maybe that's why they dry out a little bit more quickly. Anyhow, I don't like the feel of these pens, and maybe I'm being picky. Like I said, they do write fine. I don't like the look of them. I don't like the feel of them, and they seem to dry out a lot faster for me than any of these other brands. So I don't recommend these anymore. So if you watch my other video, I do recommend them, but I've changed my mind about them, and I would not buy them anymore. Although this Chamel pen might be the same as that because it seems to have the exact same build, the same lid, the same kind of less expensive feel to it, and the friction type of lid. Despite all that, I love the color so much that it's worth it. I have looked for a warm gray pen for quite a long time and I haven't been able to find one, so the fact that this Chamel pen is the color that I like makes me recommend it just based on that. So I like this pen. I would recommend it. And the Chamel pens come in a number of different colors as well, and I haven't tried any of them. I do have one of them. I have one in pink, but I haven't really used it. It seems finer. It's messy too. Yeah, anyhow. The Chamel pen does come in different colors. I haven't tried them. That's what they look like. I love the gray. It's awesome. I really recommend this pen because I do love it. I would get this instead of this if I were a beginner and looking for a gray pen. The other pens that you will sometimes encounter that I have a couple of are these Zig Memory System Millennium pens, and these, the two that I have are in colors, but you can get them in black. They're 0.05 thickness, the ones that I have, and they write like this. These are fine. They write very smooth, and the barrel looks similar to the other markers. This is how the green one works. And it's a great option too. So if you see these are probably very similar to the other ones. It's just this is not my favorite brand. It's just a personal preference thing. There's nothing wrong with them. I haven't used them enough to be able to have identified any problems with them. But I find that these other markers are really easily accessible in any stationery store, so I typically buy those ones as opposed to these ones. You'll find these in scrapbooking stores. I would not advise you against getting them. So if you want to get them, go ahead and get them. These Tri-Plus fine liner markers, they do come in a black. I don't think I have one, or if I do, it's somewhere else. It does come in black as well as a whole huge variety of colors. These come in lots and lots of colors now. I love these because they write so smoothly. So these are, oh, it's like butter. Stettler Tri-Plus. These are seriously even more smooth than these other black ones. They're really write amazingly beautiful. They also are, the Tri-Plus word comes from the triangular shape of the barrel, so they fit and feel very nice and comfortable in your hand. And they do come in lots and lots of colors. Or if you're in the United States, they come in lots of colors. So, if you are looking to do colored journaling or colored outlining, I highly, highly recommend these. Even if you don't, I highly recommend these. I use these in my planner. I use these for lists. I use these everywhere. I love them. I can't get enough of them. So, and you can buy them individually now. There was a time when I had a really hard time finding them individually, but I think with the rise in coloring books and all that sort of thing, they've started packaging them individually, and I love that I can replace my favorite colors because I do run through them. Over the course of several years, I've run through some of my favorite colors. They're nice and long lasting though. So the other markers that I had taken out to show you guys were just a variety of different Lumocolor pens that I really don't need to talk all that much about. I wanted to show you the fact that Sharpies come in lots of colors, and Lumocolor markers also come in some colors, not nearly as many as the Sharpies. So if you're looking for lots and lots of colors, Sharpies are probably going to work for you better than the Lumocolor ones. And the Sharpies, I just wanted to point out, and I think I already did, that the difference between fine and ultrafine is quite significant. There is nothing in between these that I know of. So this is fine, Sharpie. And this is, no, this is fine. Fine Sharpie. I have to put ultra in front of this. This is ultra fine Sharpie. So the difference is quite significant between fine and ultra fine for the Sharpies. Lumocolor medium. So that same downfall, the fact that there's no in-between color, no in-between weight, is the same problem for Sharpie and Lumocolor. They're both slick surface writers, so you're going to have that problem no matter which you go with. If you go with Sharpies, they're less expensive and there's more colors. So if you're not hooked on the idea of Staedtler like I am, you might want to just go for the Sharpies. They are not at all inferior to the Lumocolor Staedtlers. I just like Lumocolor markers, so I have tended to buy these ones. So the last thing that I haven't talked about is a white pen. It is handy to have a white pen. So it's really great to have a white gel pen because it allows you to write on dark surfaces if you have one that works well. Mine is fairly old and it looks like it needs to be replaced because the Signo Uniball pigment pen in white tends to write very, very well. This one is not. So I pulled out my backup white Signo Uniball gel roller in white, and it marks quite a bit better. Now the thing about white gel pens is that you will almost always have to go back over it. Like you'll always have a little bit of spotting happen because that's just the nature of gel pens. I have yet to find one that doesn't do that. And of all the ones that I've tried, and I have tried a lot of them, a lot of the other brands are a lot more spotty, like they're more like this, which this is a running out Uniball gel pen, and this is a new Uniball gel pen. So you can just go back and fix in, like you've seen me doing as I chat here. You can just go back and fill in the, I don't know what I was writing here, but the letters when you get little lines in them, or if they've got little gaps, you can just go back and fill them in. So I will throw away my old Uniball gel roller and buy a new and get a new one, because I always like to have one in the wings for when that happens. Nothing worse than being in the middle of a project and not having a pen to finish with. So that's how all of these different pens write on plain paper. So all of these markers will work fine on vellum, but you have to let them dry. So they all smeared when I wrote on them and then immediately smeared, but they all don't smear if you leave it to dry for a little while. So you can mark on vellum with regular pens, at least these regular pens. That's the Staedtler pigment liner, the Faber-Castell Pitt pen, the, what's that one called again? The Micron Pigma, and the Zig Millennium. They will all write properly. And of course, a slick writer will definitely write Lumo, and Sharpie. They will definitely write on vellum because it is a fairly slick surface and they dry immediately. So these pens will work to varying degrees on slick surfaced sticker sets. Whew, there's a mouthful for you. So the Micron, when I wrote the word Micron and then I immediately went over it, that's what happened. It did smear. And then after I would let it dry, I went over it and it still smeared. The Staedtler pigment liner is smeared right away, and it smeared a little bit, but not too much after it dried. The Lumocolor in both fine and medium don't smear at all ever, And the Faber-Castell Pitt pen smeared right away, but it didn't smear after it dried. It dried fine. So all of these pens will work on photos. I get a lot of questions about what pens I use when I do write on photos. I will sometimes do an outline around the edges of it, and occasionally I'll write my journaling on a photo. Every pen I've ever encountered will write on a photo, so you don't need to worry too much about it. All of these pens, even the Uniball, although it's a little, the surface is a little funny for getting the gel pen out onto the photo, even the Uniball will write on a photo fairly well, and they all won't. I just did this one, so I'm a little hesitant with the gel pen to smudge it, but I'll come back to it and I'll smudge it in a second, and you'll see that it works really well. Every pen I've ever encountered will mark on gessoed surfaces, and this has gesso, and it also has that gel bead medium by Liquitex, and every marker that I've ever encountered works fine on gel medium and on gesso. In fact, gesso is a really great surface to clean your markers if you get them into icky surfaces. So, some icky surfaces that can blob up on your pen are these. This is a Tim Holtz distress marker. Or no, not distress marker, a distress crayon. So this is watercolor, distress watercolor crayon. And all of the pens that I tried will mark on, but sometimes it will leave a residue on the barrel of the marker, like on the tip. And this is another really messy surface that can really mess up your pen, is chalk ink or pigment ink. So this is some Creative Color by Mama Elephant. It's a pigment ink pad, and this looks like this on cardstock, and when you write on it, it gets all over your pen. I'm going to show you how in a second. Another messy surface is mist, especially the Heidi Swapp Color Shine mist, because it has some metallic stuff in it. I'll tell you a little in a minute about things that aren't a problem for most pens. So, but these can be problematic for certain pens. It's not for some, but it is for others. And I generally keep a separate, basically when these pens start to get old, I put them in my mixed media pen supply. And so I'll use older pens on my mixed media. But let me just show you, for example, if I were to take my Staedtler pigment pen and write across this pigment ink, see how it runs, it's not marking there anymore. If I look at this pen, you'll see that there is a little bit of pink ink stuck on it, and that will make this pen not work. So what I need to do to clean it off is go to a place that doesn't have that ink on it and just kind of move the pen around to get that off. But what I find is one of the best surfaces to do that on is a gessoed piece of paper. It's so smooth that it gets the ink running again, and then lo and behold, it works again. So that's a little tip for you for cleaning your pens. Just take a piece of gessoed paper and just wipe off that pigment. Do it before it dries onto the surface of the pen, or it will ruin your pen, so you want to do it right away. If you ever run into trouble by accidentally marking on the wrong surfaces, I would not recommend that you mark over pigment ink, because it will mess up your markers. But if you ever do it by accident and need to clean off the tip of your marker, it might seem like your marker doesn't work. It's leaving some pink behind as well. I can clean that all off on a gessoed piece of paper. So, gesso is your friend in so many ways. So these surfaces can prove to be difficult for certain pens. The Heidi Swapp Color Shine in particular, it clogs the pen like I just showed you, but it also doesn't, it's hard to write in a way that is going to show up. So the brush, the Faber-Castell Pitt pen worked well, and the Sharpie worked well, but the other ones sort of just get washed away, like they don't show up as well. So these surfaces can be difficult, but some surfaces that are not difficult at all are anything with gesso on it. Acrylic paint usually doesn't cause a problem. It will smear if you run your hand over it right away, like these ones did, but the second arrow is one that I let dry, and you'll notice that they don't smear. Even the Signo will write on paint. Mr. Huey's white doesn't cause a problem for these pens anyways. These are the ones I tried. And regular dye ink, of course, doesn't cause any problems with any pens. Transparency, you can use your Sharpie on transparencies, you can use your Lumo color on transparencies. Anything else is just going to wipe off. And even the Lumo color, if you run your finger through it right away, it will smear a little tiny bit, as this shows you right there. Similar thing with shiny stickers. Shiny stickers work exactly the same as the matted kind of finished stickers. So the only stickers that will work like paper are stickers that feel like paper, and those are few and far between. Not many stickers are like that. The same thing with gold foiled accents. Only the Lumo color and Sharpie or any other slick surface pen will mark on these and stay. And the same thing goes with some shiny washi tape. I always use my slick surface markers on washi tape because they are the only ones. This is that 3M washi tape, which is particularly waxy, and then this is some regular, but this washi tape has some metallic on it. This is like a plasticky one. This one is a waxy one, and this one is regular. And I will show you. I marked on all of those with a Sharpie, and it's not streaking on the waxy 3M. This is regular metallic. This is plasticky. This is another waxy one, and this is regular. So the Lumo color and the Sharpie will both mark like that, but any other pen will kind of pool up on these surfaces and smear. And even on the regular washi tape, which is very papery, it will smear on regular washi tape too. It will smear on the metallic washi tape and on the plasticky washi tape and on the waxy washi tape. So washi tape is finicky. You'll have to use a slick surface marker for writing on it. So this has been my updated marker video. I hope you guys found it helpful and enjoyable. Basically any of these markers are awesome and I love them, and these ones are not so awesome and I'm going to toss them. I kept them just so that I could make another video to tell you guys what I don't like. And these ones are neutral. I kind of like these ones fine. They're Sharpies and Lumo colors. They're interchangeable. I don't have a preference one way or the other for them. All of these markers will work on most surfaces other than slick surfaces, such as transparencies and washi tape. So for transparencies and washi tape, you need to use Sharpies or Lumo colors or some other slick surface specific marker. But all of these other markers will work on most of the other surfaces that you'll encounter in scrapbooking, at least the ones that I've tested, with varying degrees of success, with the exception of Heidi Swapp Color Shine, which tends to suck up and cover over marker pretty well. You'll need a Sharpie or a Faber-Castell Pitt pen to work on that. Same thing with pigment ink. You want to be careful using pigment ink and marking over it because it will ruin your markers and you'll have to be very careful to clean them right away. And with the Distress watercolor crayons, these will also mess up your pen tips, so be careful with it. You can mark on it, especially with the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. That works quite well. The Micron works well as well, but you will have to be careful that if you get any of the substance on your marker tip, you just mark it, you just clean it off. It doesn't ruin your pen, but you just want to be careful with it and make sure that you clean it off. Watercolor paint, by the way, is no problem for most of these pens, especially you want to make sure that it's dry. So all of these other surfaces like Mr. Huey's Mist, acrylic paint, gesso and gel mediums and dye ink are all no problem for any of these pens. So enjoy, get yourself a pen, and if you have a favorite pen that I haven't mentioned, make sure you leave me a comment, or even if you second my opinion on some of these pens, and if you see your favorite one here, leave me a comment and let me know what your favorite pen is. And if you like a pen that's different than mine, I'm happy to try it out the next time I go to the art store. So leave me a message and take care and have a really great scrappy week.